千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together.
So if you were in attendance last time, I'm sure you recall this particular diagram to the right of the slide, and also the description of the various states that the creation process goes through to the left. So this starts with number 1, Wuji, if you recall, and then it goes to Taiji. Now, one question came up when we talk about the transition from Wuji to Taiji, from nothingness to somethingness, or as my description says here, the existence of Taiji manifests out of the non-existence of Wuji. So right off the bat, there was a question about the timeline of this. And specifically, now that we know from advanced physics, astronomy, astrophysics, we know quite a bit about the universe now. We can calculate and look back in time and know that the universe itself, the Big Bang, occurred 13.8 billion years ago. That's the best calculation we have today. It's actually 13.7999. So 13.8 billion years ago. So are we saying that Wuji, nothingness, transitioned to Taiji, something or existence of the universe itself, the ultimate existence at the very beginning? Are we saying that this transition took place 13.8 billion years ago? Okay, that's a great question, and I want to address the question head on. So, everyone, this process that we're talking about right now is purely conceptual. It makes no claims that it's accurate history. So, because it's a conceptual process of creation taking place, it doesn't always line up with the modern study of physics. So, as an example, if you take a look at 2 to 3 from Taiji to the dual aspects, differentiating into two complements, there isn't anything in physics that resembles the idea of this primal oneness polarizing into two complementary dualities. There's nothing resembling that from physics equations, but there's certainly the idea of there are many complements, complementary dualities in physics. So the concept shows up everywhere in physics, but it's not to say that the Big Bang polarized into, for instance, regular matter and dark matter, or antimatter. You know, electrons, positrons, stuff like that. Positive charge, negative charge, stuff like that. All of those are examples of many complements, many yin and yang pairs in physics, but there isn't like an overall thing that was polarizing. So overall, what we're looking at here, this diagram, is not an attempt to describe the Big Bang. After all, the ancient Chinese had no idea what the Big Bang was. They had no developed physics. Rather, this concept that you're looking at is about continuing universal creation. It's basically saying that all creation, whether it's cosmic or personal, you know, if you create something, if you come up with an idea, all creation have these essential characteristics embedded in them. big and small. And it's universal, it's also continuous. It's happening right now, even as we speak. So I think that to go back to the original question, are we saying that this occurred 13.8 billion years ago? Well, it's kind of a yes or no, yes and no answer. If you want to put a date on it, you can if you want to. You're going to see many interesting parallels between the thoughts of physicists and the thoughts of the ancient sages. And that's why we have a book called The Tao of Physics. It explores those parallels and similarities. But you don't need to necessarily put a date on it, with the realization that Wuji to Taiji is happening right now. It's going on right now, and it's going on everywhere. Okay, so that should answer one question. And I want to point out something else. Number 3, 两仪, the dual aspects that differentiates from the oneness of Taiji. There's no popular term for this in English. So if you were to study I Jing, if you were to study Qigong, Taiji, and there are many places in the West where you can study them now, you will most likely encounter terms like Wuji and Taiji. And there's going to be some sort of explanation from the instructor on what those mean. And it's going to be not too different from what you see here. But you will, in those places, you will not encounter this term about the dual aspects. So there's no popular term for that in English. This is something that you will only get into in this particular setting. Other books on the Daodejing or I Ching are not likely to get into them either. It just means that we have an opportunity here to sometimes delve deeply into interesting aspects of the Tao that otherwise people would not have the opportunity to explore. So I really like that about this setting, that we have this virtualized, internet-based setting where we can talk about these concepts. It's really kind of cool. So moving on. So number 4, yin and yang, that should be very familiar to everyone. And you can see the diagram to the right. There's the number 4 right under the pictorial representation of yin and yang, which we see all the time. So this is definitely part of our Western culture as well. It's an import from the East, but it's now part of our overall cultural fabric. So then I want to also introduce you to some additional stuff that's not normally seen. So most people are probably not aware. Most people probably have heard of yin and yang, but probably not qian kun. So that's the second bullet under yin and yang. Qian kun appears in I Ching, and it's part of many Mandarin expressions to talk about qian kun. We use qian kun not necessarily to mean male-female, even though qian kun individually they represent male-female, just as yin and yang represent female and male. Qian kun, the term, is used to refer to everything or existence. And that's because all of existence is made up of the yin and yang energies, male and female energies, qian kun. Then we also talked about ba gua. So ba gua will be another thing that you're likely to encounter if you were to formally study Qigong or Taiji. But when we talk about ba gua, which is the 8 trigrams, we have another thing that's not usually talked about. So just like the dual aspects that you saw, we have the 4 images. So again, no popular term in English. So this term is not exposed to the Western audience, but it is what gives rise to ba gua. So from the 1 to the 2, from the 2 to the 4, and then from the 4 to the 8. The 8 symbols or trigrams, and that expands into everything. My remark from last time is that it expands first into the 64 hexagrams of Jing, and that's because 8 times 8 gives you 64. So another intelligent question that came up was this. Why only 64 hexagrams? I mean, if we're talking about everything, thinking of past, present, and future, it's not just 64 hexagrams. It would be like an infinite number of hexagrams. Okay, very good. Good observation. Good understanding about, what the original concept really was trying to convey, is that you get this expansion from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, and then from there on into everything that we can see, everything past, present, and future. Very good. That's good comprehension of what we're talking about. Now, let me clarify. The reason why there are only 64 hexagrams in Jing, an inquisitive person might say, well, why not? Why stop at 64? Why not go another degree higher and go to 128, or even higher, as the case may be? Well, when the ancient Chinese devised the 64 hexagrams, they came to a point when the ancient sages realized that the 64 hexagrams were not just a finite number of things, each one representing one thing. Rather, the 64 hexagrams represented 64 categories or life patterns. So there are many life patterns, but each one can fall into one of the 64 categories. And so for whatever reason, those 64 hexagrams represent life categories so well that you can even do casting. You can even use the I Ching as a fortune-telling device. So for that reason, many people ask me, are constantly asking if I can come up with a recommendation for a faithful translation of the I Ching. The best I can do in answering that question is that it's something that I'm working on, but I have yet to see a translation of the I Ching that really emphasizes what the ancient sages were trying to say. They did not advocate that we would ask the I Ching for fortune telling at every opportunity. In fact, they cautioned against it and they advised the limited use of it, and they go to the essence of the Tao, which is that if you are truly cultivating the Tao, then your reliance on fortune telling will be greatly diminished. The reason is when you are actually cultivating the Tao, you become one with the way that is governing existence. Therefore, you yourself are able to see what's coming. You become this fortune-telling machine for yourself. Not only that, you transcend that, so you are able to decide what you want to manifest in life. Now, it may sound startling when I say it like that, but it's very real. When you get to a certain point in Tao cultivation, you determine your own destiny. You determine how you want things to be in your life. You determine what comes into your life. Very real and very powerful. So, yes, I will be working on I Ching. So years from now, I'll have something to offer, and it will have the same emphasis that I just went through with you, that I Ching, while it can be used for fortune telling, and there's going to be so many people who talk about how remarkably accurate it is, yeah, it can be used in that way, but it has a higher purpose. It has the purpose of transforming you into a living oracle for yourself. Not only that, but basically the author of your own destiny. So that's in the future. Let's continue on with the recap from last time. So we talked about qiankun. So we went through the pronunciation, qiankun, and we also talked about the meaning in the I Jing. So in the 先天 diagram that you see on the right-hand side, qian is the three solid lines on top. It represents sky, heaven. It represents male energy and the associated forceful and dynamic action, creativity, change, transformation. Whereas kun represents the earth, the three broken lines. It's the field, it's the earth, it's the soft, the gentle, the nurturing, the life-giving. It's the receptive and constant. It's the female energy. So we went through this last time, and now you have a useful term, qiankun, male, female, like yin and yang, female, male, but used in the I Ching. So previously, we also talked about an important thing, and that's, well, okay, we've got yin and yang, we've got qiankun, we've got Taiji, Wuji, all of that. So what's that got to do with me? How does that apply to my own life? So remember we went through this particular slide as well. We talked about how Wuji, Taiji, it actually represents you coming into this world because it wasn't that long ago when the person that you are today did not exist. You were only a potential. When that potential manifested itself as actuality, you came into existence. That is the Taiji, that's your ultimate state. It is the individual, it's the oneness of the individual that you are. Now, yin and yang are the female and male energies that interacted to cause you to come into being, at least the biological part of you as a physical entity. You came out of that. But more importantly, we talked about the other ways, the non-biological, non-physical ways that yin and yang energies interact in your life, that you embody both, the yin and yang. You've got all kinds of yin and yang dualities at play in everyday living. They interact and they expand into everything in your life, which is another way to talk about the complexities that come into being. You've got so many things that you have to handle, that you have to work on, so many demands and requirements. It's filling up a very busy life. So don't lose the main idea here. What we're doing right now is that we're applying the macrocosmic Tao principle of creation and shrinking that into the personal scale, your scale, my scale. And we're talking about how that applies just as easily in your life and my life, in all our lives. So what are the manifestations that yin and yang energies, manifest and create? Well, there's all kinds of stuff in your busy life. There's tools, resources, materials, space. These are all things for you to create things, make things, design and build things. And when I talk about interactions and connections, these are all the different ways that you relate to other people in your life. And how do you do the above? How do you relate? How do you connect? How do you design, architect, and build? Well, you need knowledge. You need skills that you develop. So these are all complexities filling up your life. And so we all know that when things become more complex, it's just increasingly difficult to figure out, to get a handle on it, to figure out how best to maintain control over everything. So oftentimes we're disoriented by the complexity, and that's what, for many of us, that's what brings us to the Tao. We want to study the Tao to figure out how to return to the Tao, how to be able to surf the waves of life. So as the last part of the recap, you probably also recall that there are diagrams like this, which, having seen the explanation, having gone through how, Wuji becomes Taiji, becomes the dual aspects, becoming yin and yang, and then the four images and the 8 trigrams, you are now much better able to make sense of what you're looking at here. So when we talk about universal creation, everything coming out of nothing and coming out of nowhere, that is the direction going up in this diagram. Now, when we talk about complexity, going back to simplicity, going back, reducing our lives from its present complex state to a simplified state, that's the other way. That's returning to the Tao. All right, so we talked about all this and more last time. Let me try to, I know it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to absorb. So I want to try to help make things a little bit easier by summarizing everything into 5 steps. So here's the key to unravel, to decrypt chapter 25 of the Daodejing. 5 steps. Step number 1, remember the first part of the chapter talks about the Tao as the source of creation. We all went through that, so probably not a big surprise, right? So remember, we delve deeper into the conceptual stages. It's not specifically talked about in this chapter of the Daodejing, but I'm sure you would agree that was a fun discussion. Wuji, Taiji, Yin and Yang, Bagua. Now, if you follow the recap just a moment ago, you might look at that and say, hey, wait a minute, there's a couple of things missing. Yes, indeed. All that I'm doing in showing this particular pipeline from Wuji to Taiji to Yin and Yang to Bagua is that I'm using only the terms that have been popularly translated into English that are usually taught in, for instance, a Taiji school. So when we actually talked about it, we don't just talk about the surface level. We don't just talk about the stuff that's kind of watered down and Americanized, Westernized for the Western audience. No, we stick to the authentic stuff. We got into the details that most people are not aware of. And what were those and where are they in this pipeline? Here they are. As you can see, from Taiji, the ultimate oneness, it transformed or transitioned into the dual aspects, which become formally, they become formalized into yin and yang, which you may recall is also called qiankun. The difference between yin and yang and qiankun is that the order is reversed. Yin and yang is female-male. Qiankun is male-female. So the complementary dualities of yin and yang or qiankun transitions into the 4 images, 四象, which in turn transitions into the 8 trigrams. So here in this revised and detailed pipeline, you see 0, 1, 2, 2 refined as yin and yang, and then 4, and then 8. So again, I think that's kind of cool. I think it's cool to be able to talk about things that are not usually available anywhere. So number 3, after we delve deeper into the conceptual stages of creation, the last part of Daodejing 25 ties the macrocosmic Tao of the universe to the personal Tao of our world. So remember, the last part says from, basically from the ground up, that people follows the laws of the earth follows the laws of heaven follows the laws of the Tao, and Tao follows nature. So that ties everything at different scales together. The Tao that applies in the universe is the Tao that applies in our world. And what that means is that when we look out upon creation itself, when we look at all the myriad things in existence, everything all around us, they correspond in one way or another to the complexities of our lives. So the profusion of life, the endless varieties of animals and plants and planets, stars, galaxies, all the complexities in existence itself. They manifest, they correspond to the complexities in our lives. So those are 3 steps. Let's go to the last 2 steps. So because of that correspondence, because of everything tying together, the overall meaning of Daodejing 25 becomes easy to see. And that is, the more we understand the Tao, this universal Tao that is also the personal Tao, the better we will know how to live skillfully and gracefully. And lastly, number 5, the specific example that we used is to basically look at something like feng shui, oftentimes sold as techniques, secrets, ancient secrets, stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that we can take a look at them through the eyes of the Tao and extract the powerful lessons and get close to the essence without all the mumbo jumbo.
Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.